Imagine you walk into a store. You weren't planning to buy anything expensive, but then you see it, the thing you've been wanting for months. And right there at the checkout counter, a smiling employee says 7 little words that change everything. Would you like to pay in installments? No interest? No big upfront cost? Just small, easy monthly payment? It feels like the smart move, responsible even. You say yes. You walk out feeling good about yourself. But here's the question nobody asks in that moment. What if that feeling, that sense of control, that little rush of satisfaction was specifically engineered to make you poorer? Because it was. Most people think credit cards are neutral tool, like a hammer, dangerous if misused, but fine in the right hand. And sure, that's technically true. But what most people don't realize is that credit cards aren't designed the way a hammer is designed. They're not built to make your life easier. They're built from the ground up to exploit the way your brain works. And the worst part, the people who designed them know more about your psychology than you do. We like to believe we're rational with money, that we do the math, weigh our options, and make smart decisions. But study after study shows that's not how humans actually work. We don't think in numbers, we think in feeling. And credit card companies have spent billions of dollars figuring out exactly which feelings to trigger and when. Let's start with the most powerful trick in the entire credit card playbook. It's called decoupling, and it's the reason spending with a card feels so different from spending with cash. Here's a simple experiment that researchers actually ran. They auctioned off tickets to a sold-out basketball game. Half the bidders were told they'd pay with cash. The other half were told they could pay by credit card. The credit card group bid, on average, twice as much. Same tickets, same game, completely different perception of value, just because of how payment was framed. Why? Because paying cash hurt, literally. Brain imaging studies show that spending cash activates the same region of your brain linked to physical pain. You feel the loss immediately, but swiping a card, that pain is delayed. It's invisible. It doesn't feel real, not in that moment. And credit card companies know this. It's why they design cards to be sleek, smooth, and satisfying to use. It's why contactless payments and one-click checkouts exist. Every bit of friction removed from the spending process is friction removed from your natural instinct to stop and think. But that's just the beginning. Now, let's talk about minimum payment, which might be the most cleverly disguised trap ever invented. Say you have a $3,000 balance on a card with a 20% interest rate. Your bank tells you the minimum payment is $60 a month. $60. That sounds manageable. That sounds responsible. And so you pay the minimum, pat yourself on the back, and move on. What the statement doesn't shout at you is this. At that rate, it will take you nearly 20 years to pay off that balance. And you'll pay almost $4,500 in interest alone. You borrowed $3,000 and gave back $7,500. The minimum payment isn't designed to help you get out of debt. It's designed to keep you in it, just comfortable enough to stay. Here's the deeper thing going on. And this is where it gets genuinely fascinating. Credit cards don't just change how much you spend, they change how you think about yourself. There's a psychological phenomenon called mental accounting. Our brains don't treat all money the same. We have invisible buckets. The $200 in your checking account feels real, tangible. The $4,000 on your credit card, that lives in a different mental bucket, one labeled future problem. And future problems don't feel urgent. So you keep spending in the present while the future problem quietly grows. This is why people can simultaneously have credit card debt at 22% interest and a savings account earning 4%. Mathematically, that makes no sense. You should use the savings to pay off the debt immediately. But psychologically, the savings feel like safety. The debt feels like a separate category. And so both sit there, working against each other, while the bank collects interest on the gap between your feeling. There's another layer here too. Credit card rewards programs, cashback, miles, points, hotel upgrades. These programs are brilliant, not because they save you money, but because they give you a reason to feel good about spending. You're not being impulsive. You're being strategic. You're earning rewards. But research consistently shows that rewards card users spend 12 to 18% more than people using cash or debit. The points are real, but they almost never offset the extra spending they inspire. The house always wins. So, what do you actually do with all of this? First, understand what you're dealing with. This isn't about willpower. It's not a character flaw if you've overspent on a credit card. You were up against billion-dollar systems designed specifically to make you do exactly that. Knowing that levels the playing field. Second, reintroduce friction deliberately. Before any non-essential purchase over $50, wait 48 hours. Let the delayed pain of the card catch up with the decision. You'll be surprised how often the urge disappears. Third, ignore the minimum payment number completely. Calculate what you need to pay each month to be debt-free in 12 to 24 months and treat that as your actual bill. The minimum payment exists to benefit the bank, not you. And fourth, if you're going to use rewards cards, treat them like a debit card with extra steps. Only spend what you already have. Never carry a balance. The rewards are only real if you're not paying 20% interest for the privilege of earning 1.5% back. Here's the thing that stays with me about all of this. Credit cards aren't inherently evil. Used with awareness, they're genuinely useful. But the system around them, the minimum payments, the rewards psychology, the frictionless spending, that system wasn't built to make you wealthy. It was built to make the bank wealthy, using your own psychology against you. And the first step to beating any system is understanding how it works. The people who build real wealth aren't necessarily smarter or higher earners. They're just the ones who stopped letting invisible systems make decisions for them. They slowed down, they saw the trap, and they walked around it. Now you can too.